Time now for the arts page on Lake Effect. I'm Bonnie North.
All of me, why not take all of me?
That's singer Andrew Suvalsky from his newest CD, A World That Swings. Suvalsky won the 2007 Backstage Bistro Award in New York for Best Jazz Vocalist and has received rave reviews from jazz publications for his CDs and live performances. Originally from Milwaukee, Suvalsky has lived in New York City since 1998, where he's also a successful interior designer. His designs have been featured in the New York Times and on Home and Garden Television. Suvalsky is back in Milwaukee this weekend visiting family and performing what he calls his homecoming concert. He stopped by the Lake Effect studio for a chat, and I asked him why he decided to pursue jazz.
It certainly wasn't a decision. It was more that I came to know jazz. I always knew of jazz as like jazz. It wasn't something that was played in our house, really. It wasn't, although music was a big part of my life growing up. You know, we always listened to whatever was popular, and my older sister, she was like kind of like a natural jukebox of whatever was popular at the time. So everything from Carole King to Stevie Wonder to Fifth Dimension, the Beatles were huge. And so I was surrounded by great music to begin with, but not jazz. And I personally kind of grew up always liking things that were a little fun and flashy to me, that had a little edge, and might be one of the reasons I moved to New York. You know, I loved Milwaukee, but things that had an edge and sort of took me a little bit out of my regular everyday routine. We all have something that is our, dream or something that we hang on to that sort of gives us a little outlet. And later on in life, when I discovered jazz, the vibe I got from the type of jazz that I really was attracted to, which was generally more swingy, a little more fun, not necessarily the darker side of jazz, which there certainly is. When that attracted me, it sort of represented on some level a lifestyle or a way of life that I was always attracted to. And that could have expression in many ways. You know, I love architecture, I love design. And
that's your other life.
That's my other life.
Yeah,
and I absolutely feel like what made me gravitate to one was sort of inside of me a certain interest of what could be, what can be in life, that also helped me gravitate to the other. So architecture and design came by me naturally because I had some ability to draw and I could visualize space, so that happened. And then jazz, I kind of knew I could sing, but I didn't know I could really know. I kind of came out of me naturally. I liked the way singing felt. I found myself naturally kind of hooking into rhythms of certain songs and then playing with rhythms of songs that were not always so evident. And then all of a sudden I discovered jazz, and I said, I think that's what jazz is about. You know, it wasn't intellectual at all. It's just that I kind of related something in that style of music.
I remember every little thing you used to do. I'm so lonely. Every road I walked along with you. No wonder I am lonely. The sky is blue, the night is cold, the moon is new, but love is old. And while I'm waiting here, this heart of mine is singing, lover, come back to me. The sky was blue and high above, the moon was new. And
I can add, though, because we spoke about this before we started recording, about Ella Fitzgerald, I credit her with truly being my introduction to jazz. Do you remember, I'm sure you do, when you could buy for a penny your record clubs?
Yes, oh yes.
And all of us know that we always wanted like 3 records, and then the rest we had to like fill in just whatever for our 1 penny, so we could get all, the 3 or 4 that we really cared about. So I was probably 20. I was filling out one of those forms, and I think the last one I picked was Ella Fitzgerald, Best of the Songbooks. I had no real desire for that. Maybe it was CDs already. I had no real desire for that CD. But I remembered her because in the 70s when I was growing up, she did the live, is it Live or Memorex? Do you remember those commercials?
Yes, I do.
And so she was still around. She was more like the older lady with the glasses, and she was still an icon. So I remembered her. It's not like she was, who the hell is Ella Fitzgerald? I just didn't have a personal affinity for her yet. So I got that CD, and lo and behold, that became my absolute favorite. I said, I love these songs. I kind of already knew I liked standards, but I didn't really know what standards were. Fell in love with her. That music, her interpretation of it, and truly a love affair was born. I was already interested in singing. I was already starting to sing a little bit in Chicago, which is where I lived at the time, expressing myself in music, and I started to believe I could do this, whatever that meant. That was my introduction to jazz.
Well, it's interesting you mention Ella Fitzgerald because I certainly hear her influence in the way you phrase and the rhythm. It's so important. I mean, we think of melody as being the primary thing, and she didn't stint on melody, but the rhythm was as important.
Oh, yeah.
And she, of course, she's famous for her scatting. It's something that you do as well. And, you know, it's interesting that that's how you found your way into jazz was through the rhythm.
Well, the rhythm, it's like it's in you, right? You got the rhythm or you don't. We all have some rhythm in us. We wouldn't walk or be able to function. Breathe. And I think that's a really amazing fact, that rhythm is how the world exists. Every molecule, everything works in rhythm. So if you can, the more rhythm you got, I think the more in sync you are. So I'm very happy for that natural sense of rhythm that I think I do have, that I can express in music, because it's very comfortable. It's very joyous. It makes singing fun. It makes the ability to find something new in a song really, really fun. And I certainly do hear something that I relate to in Mel Torme and Ella Fitzgerald. One thing that certainly both of them did very well, they're not the only artists who did this, but they could take one song and you could hear 10 recordings of it, whether it was done in a studio or live or with a trio or with a piano, or with, they could just reinvent it over and over and over. They kept finding, while staying true to it, a new way to express it, something new about that song. That's always very interesting to me about jazz. And certain songs allow that maybe more than others, and the composer perhaps would be more okay with that than other composers with their material. But what Ella and Mel Torme in particular did is they kept finding the nuances and the different ways, whether it be slow or fast or really swingy or not, to re-express these songs. And that's, for me, well, that's great, because I'll never run out of material.
Right.
I'll never run out of material if I can do it, if that's what I'm doing.